a fleet of Xerian warships had suddenly appeared, surrounding their ship. They were demanding immediate surrender. Thompson cursed under his breath, realizing that they hadn't managed to escape the planet before Zargan discovered their actions. The situation was dire, and Thompson knew they were outmatched. However, he wasn't one to go down without a fight. He had a crew to protect, a child to save, and a promise to fulfill. In a moment of decision, Zargan abruptly cut off the transmission. Davis let out a shaky breath, relieved that their plan had bought them some time. The tension in the air was palpable as the crew prepared for whatever came next. Finally, the shuttle came into view. Thompson shifted Xylo's weight in his arms and reached for his communicator. He informed their crew, specifically Commander Davis, that they were ready for immediate extraction and that the med bay should be prepared for the wounded. However, instead of receiving a smooth response, Davis's voice crackled with tension as she revealed a new complication. As the broadcast played, Thompson watched the Xerian fleet on the sensors. They were holding position, but even at this distance, he could sense their unease. Suddenly, a small blip detached itself from the fleet and began descending towards the planet. Thompson frowned, zooming in on the image. It was a single Zephyran shuttle, small and fast, slipping through the blockade with practiced ease. As the shuttle docked with the Valiant and the great ship turned its prow towards home, Thompson allowed himself to believe, for the first time in a long time, that everything was going to be all right. But before they could say more, a deafening boom shattered the air. The ground shook beneath their feet, and the tree swayed as if caught in a gale. "What the hell was that?" Sergeant Nguyen yelled, his rifle snapping up. As they broke atmosphere and soared towards the waiting Valiant, Thompson held Xylo a little tighter, silently vowing to protect this innocent child no matter the cost. He had lost his own son, but perhaps in saving Xylo, he could find a measure of redemption. Xantha's face paled. "It's my father. He's here." As if on cue, a horde of Zephyran soldiers burst from the tree line, their armor glinting in the bioluminescent light. At their head stood Chancellor Zargan, his face twisted with rage. Thompson nodded, a sense of relief washing over him. "Then let's not keep her waiting. Davis, keep that broadcast going. We're going to make a run for it." The group piled into the shuttle, Xylo still clinging to Thompson's neck like a lifeline, as the small craft lifted off, skimming low over the bioluminescent canopy. Davis nodded and set to work. Within minutes, the airwaves were filled with the medical officer's clinical, dispassionate voice describing in excruciating detail the effects of the imaginary virus, lesions, hemorrhaging, organ failure, all illustrated with gruesome images of the Valiant's dead. In reality, volunteers from the crew were dressed in elaborate makeup to portray the victims. As the shuttle touched down in the clearing, Thompson and his team emerged, Xylo cradled protectively in the captain's arms. The bioluminescent forest seemed to hold its breath, the only sound the soft hum of the shuttle's engines winding down. Suddenly, a second craft broke through the canopy, the downdraft from its thrusters whipping the glowing foliage into a frenzy. Thompson tensed, his hand instinctively reaching for his sidearm. But as the shuttle's ramp lowered, a familiar figure emerged. "Mother!" Xantha cried, his voice breaking with emotion. High Counselor Zara strode forward, her robes billowing in the breeze. Her face, so like her son's, was etched with a mixture of determination and relief. Zara hesitated for a split second, her eyes locked on Thompson's. In that moment, a wealth of understanding passed between them, the shared knowledge of the sacrifices that must be made for the greater good. Then she was gone, sprinting for the shuttle with Xylo in her arms. Xantha followed, his weapon raised to cover their retreat. Thompson and his team formed a line, their rifles leveled at the advancing Zephyran soldiers. Plasma bolts filled the air, sizzling and crackling with deadly energy. Thompson couldn't help but marvel at the twists of fate that had brought them to this moment. The human captain, a renegade Zephyran commander, a traumatized child, and a rebel councilwoman, all united in a desperate bid for survival and justice. It was like something out of a horror novel, but Thompson knew that the stakes were all too real. In his chest, Corporal Giannis took a bolt to the leg but continued firing while propped up against a tree. Thompson felt a searing pain shoot through his shoulder, but he gritted his teeth and kept fighting. He had to buy time for Zara and the others to escape, no matter the cost. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw the shuttle lift off, its engines roaring as it ascended into the sky. A fierce, proud smile spread across his face. They had accomplished their mission and Xylo was safe. However, there was no time to celebrate as the Xerian army kept coming, an endless wave of armor and plasma. Thompson's team was being diminished one by one. Nan fell, his helmet shattered by a plasma bolt. Hawkins, already injured, took a shot to the gut and collapsed, his rifle slipping from his lifeless fingers. And then, it was just Thompson, standing alone against the might of the Zephyran army. Zargan advanced, his pistol aimed at the human captain's head. "Kneel," the Chancellor spat, his voice thick with contempt. "Kneel before your superior, human, and I may grant you a quick death." Thompson laughed, a sound filled with defiance. "I kneel to no one, especially not to a monster like you." He lunged forward, ignoring the searing pain in his shoulder. His rifle fired once, twice, 3 times, and Zargan staggered back, a look of shocked disbelief on his face. The Chancellor fell, 3 smoking holes in his chest, but even in death, his soldiers surged forward, their weapons blazing. Thompson felt the plasma bolts tear through him, his life's blood spilling onto the glowing forest floor. But even as he fell, his eye searched the sky, seeking the distant glimmer of the shuttle carrying Xylo to safety. "Live well, little one," he whispered, his voice fading. "Live and be happy. That's all I could ever ask." With a final shuddering breath, Captain James Thompson, hero of the United Earth Space Fleet, slipped away into the waiting darkness. High above, the shuttle docked with the Valiant and the great ship leapt into hyperspace, leaving the Xerian fleet far behind. In the aftermath, Zara took her rightful place as leader of the Xerian people, with Xantha by her side. Together, they began the arduous task of rebuilding their society, turning away from the path of cruelty and oppression. On Earth, little ZYTH found a new home and a new family, raised by Thompson's sister and her husband. He grew into a fine young man, his heart filled with the same courage and compassion that had defined his savior. Years later, when Xylo joined the United Earth Space Fleet, he did so with a proud heart and a clear purpose. He would follow in the footsteps of the man who had sacrificed everything to save him, who had shown him the true meaning of heroism. And though Captain James Thompson was gone, his legacy lived on in the life of a young Xerian boy, in the hearts of all those he had touched, and in the annals of history where his name would forever be remembered as a shining example of the best of humanity. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel. And for every comment that says Lady8, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time. Captain James Thompson, a courageous leader in the United Earth Space Fleet, gripped the armrests of his captain's chair as a distress signal crackled through the comm system. The message, spoken in broken English, pleaded for someone, anyone, to come to the rescue of a helpless Xerian child named Xylo. Abandoned and left to die in the treacherous jungles outside the city-state of Xanth, Xylo's fate hung in the balance. Stepping out first, plasma rifle in hand, Thompson and his team fanned out, scanning their surroundings. The captain warned his team to stay alert, as the intel suggested that the jungle was teeming with dangerous creatures. As they followed the small footprints left by Xylo, a blood-chilling howl cut through the thick air, causing everyone to tense up. Shapes darted between the trees, and a pair of green eyes flashed in the shadows. Suddenly, wolf-like creatures, known as prowlers, charged out of the underbrush, their fangs bared and fur matted. The forest erupted in plasma fire as Thompson's team engaged in a fierce battle with the beasts. Amidst the chaos, one of the prowlers pounced at Private Hawkins, leaving him injured and in pain. Xantar sneered at Thompson, daring him to violate their sovereign territory. Thompson, undeterred, made it clear that he was there for one purpose, to save Xylo. The commander argued that the boy belonged to Zephyria and that his fate was none of the humans' concern. Thompson, fueled by his sense of justice, took a step forward, his rifle leveled at Xantar's chest. He refused to let an innocent child die. Thompson refused to leave anyone behind and vowed to protect his team at all costs. He fired a plasma bolt, taking down the prowler that had attacked Hawkins. With determination, Thompson helped the injured soldier to his feet, refusing to let him succumb to his wounds. The team pressed on, pushing deeper into the forest, following the small footprints that they believed belonged to Xylo. Young Xylo let out a piercing scream as his heartless parents tossed him into the vast and unfamiliar alien wilderness. With tears streaming down his face, he watched helplessly as they flew away, abandoning him forever. The inhabitants of Zephyria, a distant planet, turned a blind eye to the plight of this poor child, leaving him to fend for himself. However, there was one group of beings who couldn't bear to see him suffer, the humans. Thompson's heart swelled with relief as he realized that they had succeeded in rescuing this innocent alien child. The Valiant had defied all odds, faced dangerous creatures and hostile soldiers, all for the sake of saving a life. In that moment, Thompson knew that he had made the right choice, risking everything to protect a child in need. Thompson knew he would face harsh resistance in his quest to save young Xylo, but he couldn't ignore the stakes. If the humans did not intervene, this defenseless child would surely perish alone in the unforgiving alien wilds. With the fate of an innocent life hanging in the balance, the Valiant shuttle touched down in a clearing within the dense jungle. As they continued their search, a piercing screech cut through the sky, catching everyone's attention. A massive winged creature known as a Xerian sky terror swooped down from the clouds, drawn by the scent of blood. Thompson ordered his team to seek cover in the wreckage as the sky terror dove, its talons gouging deep furrows in the earth. Xylo, despite his fear and exhaustion, seemed drawn to the human soldiers. Thompson slowly lowered his rifle, extending a hand towards the frightened boy, assuring him that he was safe now. The child hesitated, his body tense with fear, but something in Thompson's voice and demeanor seemed to offer a glimmer of hope. With cautious steps, Xylo approached, his gaze locked on the unfamiliar but kind faces of the humans. Tensions mounted as both sides remained at an impasse, ready to unleash their weapons at any moment. However, amidst the tense standoff, a small, frightened voice broke the silence. All eyes turned towards the underbrush, where a young Giran child named Xylo emerged, trembling and wide-eyed. Thompson's heart skipped a beat as he saw the small figure, no more than 6 Earth years old, standing before them. The team opened fire, but their plasma shots barely made a dent in the creature's thick hide. Thompson quickly devised a plan, urging his team to concentrate their fire on the Sky Terror's wings in order to pin it down. The soldiers followed his lead, peppering the creature's wings with plasma bolts. The Sky Terror screeched in rage, unable to take flight, and Thompson seized the opportunity to lob a plasma grenade, causing the creature to collapse in a smoking heap. The bioluminescent plants cast an eerie glow as they ventured forward, but there was still no sign of Xylo. Suddenly, Sergeant Guan held up a fist, signaling the group to halt. He had spotted something up ahead, wreckage. As they approached cautiously, they discovered a small Zephyran shuttle, crashed and partially buried in the underbrush. Thompson called out, hoping that Xylo had survived the crash, but there were no bodies to be found. However, the explosion had drawn unwanted attention. A squad of Xerian soldiers emerged from the trees, their weapons trained on the humans. At the head of the group stood Commander Xantar, his face contorted with disdain. The Xerians had a deep-seated animosity towards humans, as they had been banished from Zephyria after a brutal conflict. As a widowed father himself, Thompson felt a powerful instinct to protect this innocent alien child. Despite the risks and the potential confrontation with the ruthless Giran High Council, Thompson made the decision to divert his ship, the USF Valiant, towards the restricted planet of Xeria. The tension was palpable as the Valiant established orbit, knowing that the Zephyrans had banished all humans from their world after a bloody conflict years ago. Suddenly, the communicator flickered again, and Chancellor Zargan's scowling face appeared on the screen. His eyes were cold and filled with contempt as he confronted Thompson. Zargan accused Thompson of stealing his grandson and turning his own son against him, declaring it an act of war that would not go unpunished. Thompson's jaw clenched, his mind racing for a solution. Thompson stood still, cradling Xylo in his arms. The boy had quieted down, his small face pressed against the captain's neck. Thompson revealed that he too had a son who had tragically died from a rare illness 2 years ago. He couldn't save his own son then, but he was determined to save Xylo now. With a gentle tone and warm smile, the captain's reassurance seemed to calm him. The boy, overcome with emotion, ran towards the captain and embraced him tightly, clinging to him as if he were a lifeline. Thompson held the child close, feeling his small frame shaking with sobs. He whispered soothing words, assuring the boy that he was safe. Commander Xantar and his soldiers watched the scene with a mix of shock and confusion. It was unexpected to witness a battle-hardened human soldier comforting a weeping Zephyran child. He couldn't allow Zargan to destroy his crew and take Xylo back to a life of suffering. Thompson had one last desperate plan. He turned to Davis, his eyes burning with intensity, and instructed her to broadcast a message on all frequencies. They would claim that the Valiant had been infected with a deadly human virus, and most of the crew was already dead. It would be made to sound horrific, with detailed descriptions of the symptoms. They needed to sell this bluff to buy them some time. Thompson looked up at Xantar, his eyes filled with fury. He couldn't comprehend how anyone could condemn a child to such a fate. Xantar flinched, as if struck by Thompson's words. He explained that it was his father, High Counselor Zargan, who had decreed the boy's fate. Xantar had pleaded with him to show mercy, but his pleas fell on deaf ears. Thompson turned back to Zargan, his face reflecting grim determination. He challenged the Chancellor, warning him that if they came any closer, they risked exposing their entire fleet to a plague that would make the Black Death seem like a minor ailment. Zargan's face paled, his uncertainty evident as he glanced at his advisors for guidance. Thompson's bluff seemed to be working. Finally, Xantar squared his shoulders and made a decision. He accepted Thompson's offer, acknowledging that he couldn't return to Zephyria after what he had done and witnessed. He couldn't bear to be complicit in his father's cruelty any longer. Xantar would come with them to Earth, hoping that there he could find a way to help his people and show them a better path. The Zephyran commander took a deep breath, gathering his courage before continuing. He confessed that he was the one who had sent the distress signal to Thompson's ship. He couldn't bear to witness an innocent child suffer for the sins of his father. Xantar knew that humans would be the only ones brave and foolish enough to risk everything to save Xylo. Thompson clasped Xantar's arm, a gesture of respect and gratitude. He welcomed the commander aboard and expressed his eagerness to leave this place behind. The group, with Hawkins being carried on a makeshift stretcher, began their long trek back to the shuttle. As they trudged through the bioluminescent forest, the trees seemed to whisper and sigh, as if acknowledging the extraordinary turn of events that had just unfolded. After a moment, Xantar lowered his weapon, signaling for his troops to do the same. He stepped forward, his expression indicating both sadness and anger. Xantar revealed that the boy's name was Xylo and that he was the son of a nobleman who had recently been executed for treason against the High Council. As punishment for his father's crimes, Xylo was sentenced to exile in the wilderness, which essentially meant a death sentence for someone so young. Xantar nodded, understanding and respect shining in his eyes. He suggested that Thompson take Xylo with him to Earth, where the boy could grow up safe and loved. Xylo deserved a chance at a real life, away from the cruelty and madness of Zephyria. Thompson's eyes widened at the suggestion and he extended an invitation to Xantar as well, offering him asylum on Earth. However, Xantar hesitated, glancing back at his soldiers who appeared torn between loyalty to their commander and duty to the High Council. A fleet of Xerian warships had suddenly appeared, surrounding their ship. They were demanding immediate surrender.